right, marketologists, we have another marketing strategy session. I have Dennis with me today. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. We'll talk about event marketing. We're going to talk about marketing in general. And then we're going to also talk about entrepreneurialism. Is that a word? Entrepreneurialism? I think it is. So, Dennis, welcome to the show.
Jeff, super excited. Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Dennis is known for his event that he puts on. So he has an event. Is it Do You?
This is the most controversial thing that we're going to talk about right now today is the naming convention of the conference. And it's so funny, like the genesis of how the name was started. Nobody seems to pronounce it right, and I'm okay with that as long as they're talking about it. It's like the old Saturday Night Live skit from the early 80s. It's like, you could call me this and you could call me that, as long as you're calling me something. So
yeah,
some people call it DOYO. Some people have called it the DOYO. We affectionately refer to it as DOYO, as in Do Our City, Do Youngstown, Ohio.
Okay, that's where it came from. Because I was thinking Do Yo, but then I was like, nah, that's slang, and I'm just thinking from a slang point of view. But I say, well, it must be Do You. It must be that. But makes sense now. Makes sense. So tell us a little bit. Oh, wait a minute. I got to get one more accolade. And then he's also a world-renowned, global known father. So, and you can see that on all his social. He is a proud father, which is a great thing because we don't get as much accolades as we probably should in that area.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And I don't hide from that fact. One of the reasons why, many reasons why I started my own business a decade ago was to make sure that I was going to free my time up and my life up to be able to be there for my kids and all the important events. I have been working in corporate America. I saw my 2-year-old on Facebook trick-or-treating, and I was in Boston, and it killed me. The second thing is I always want to be a really good example for my kids. And you talk about hard work and hustle and achieving. And I feel like by showing them and doing gives them hopefully that work ethic and that inspiration. And then in 3, it's motivation, man. I have mouths to feed. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. So failure is not really an option in our house. So.
Yeah. But that's great, though. I mean, that's great to hear because, like I said, a lot of times we hear so much about absentee fathers and we hear about, a lot of the bad, but we don't celebrate a lot of the fathers that are there, which there are a lot of them that are actually present and a lot of them that are role models and just like yourself, enjoy going to all the recitals and gymnastics and graduations and things of that nature, which a lot of times when working for somebody else, sometimes limits your ability to do so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And lately it's been, all of my mail has been showing up at baseball fields. But it's, what? It's great. They're back out, they're doing activities. So much was lost over the past year. And it's so healthy that, that we're getting to see our community and we're getting to see people in the community coming out for, just Little League baseball in general. Like last night, we had a game and there's a lot of people from the community that you haven't seen over the past year because obviously the current landscape has made it difficult.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, so talk about your journey a little bit. I mean, you went from corporate, you went from them telling you, I'm sure you've heard this, like I've heard this, that family is important, but no, you can't get time off, to being basically your own driver of destination. So tell us a little bit about your story.
The quick tour is this: off to college to play college basketball at the Division II level. Found out between my junior and senior year, there's not much of a need for 5'8" point guards in the NBA. So the degree was going to be the pathway. Formerly trained as a school teacher, elementary education, coached college basketball for 5 years, taught middle school, worked on my master's degree in administration. The minute I got that administration degree I got out of the public sector and got into healthcare sales and marketing pre-Web 2.0 in 2001-ish, 2005-ish. Um, um, was selling high-end medical equipment, MRI, diagnostic imaging equipment, and made a career change in my early 20s or mid 20s. That went from a territory position to a regional manager to then a move to New York City. I worked for a mid-sized company when I got started. Then I started partnering with physicians and venture capitalists on medical imaging centers. That took me to New York City from Northeast Ohio. Then met my wife. We moved to Columbus, Ohio to partner in a business. So I got my real first taste of entrepreneurialism by partnering with a group of venture capitalists on a new piece of medical imaging technology. And I really liked the model, but mid 2000s, the bottom fell out of the market.
Mm-hmm.
We broke even, which felt like we were making money in 2005. And GE Healthcare came knocking. And they asked me to handle all their lead generation for $1 billion healthcare IT portfolio. The way that they found me was that I was making YouTube videos back in 2005, 2006 to promote the medical imaging facility. If you can remember that far back, not many healthcare, if any at all, healthcare service providers, doctors, hospitals were on social media and Facebook and YouTube marketing their services. It was taboo. It was the rhetoric was, you can't post yourself on a social media site where college kids are posting themselves at cake parties. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea. We had limited advertising budget. I was the sales rep. I'd go out and make relationships with the doctors. So I started putting things onto Facebook and onto YouTube. And it gained traction in national trade publications. And then GE came calling. And what was interesting about GE was they wanted to go that route, but they weren't ready yet. And
Okay.
so they couldn't approve it from a regulatory and legal perspective. So they were like, hey, go out and get us a bunch, lead generation for this $1 billion portfolio. But all the things that we brought you to the table, you can't do. So that was a challenge. But I got trade show experience at GE Healthcare at these big events that had 60 to 100,000 people coming. And I have primary responsibility for all the management for those events from a marketing perspective. And that comes in, that obviously comes into play with the conference that I decided to create. We launched a webinar series. Now you look at everybody's virtual, but we launched a webinar series back in that time frame around 2006 to 2009, where I was probably doing a webinar a month for lead gen purposes. So a lot of the foundation of where I think I was going to go was the fact that I knew I wanted to have a company that was going to take the old ad agency model away, ad buys, and move it into this new perspective where people would contract me as their director of marketing. We'd help them with their digital strategy. But from 2005 to 2010, it was kind of early. People really were not, now it's just really commonplace. So I was early in a lot of places. So I got the bright idea when I brought my third kid home from the hospital that I fired my boss at GE 2 weeks later and started my marketing agency consulting business, lined up client number one, and then got a few more along the way. And almost a decade later, we've expanded from just providing day-to-day marketing services for businesses and organizations. And we get a client and lose a client and get a couple more. And, we introduced workshops that then spawned into that trade show experience and that education background that I got into developing a marketing conference dedicated to ongoing professional development year-round through our online assets, and then having an in-person event. An interesting way that came all about. And then we also, in addition to that, another offshoot of these two businesses then became a high-end print publication, native advertising play with print, digital, and event type of situations in the regional market as well. And that's been it, man.
Wow. So everything progressed, naturally in a sense. You know, certain experiences from the past prepared you for what you're doing now, which is great. And a lot of that happens to us and we don't even know it. We just think it's circumstance, but you know, it prepares us for where we are today. So
Yeah, we're really fortunate that, I mean, like having multiple revenue streams in a business is really hard. Like it's exhausting at times. But then over the past year, like it's what saved the business because 2/3 of it was wiped out because A, we couldn't have events, and B, the print publication relies on distribution in all the places that were closed down. So
okay,
restaurants, bars, physician practices, retail. So the agency side of the business, grew in 2020 and sustained us. Um, and and they all kind of feed one another as well. They're all in either advertising or marketing services or event.
okay, okay. Now, question I have is, sometimes we have debates on this about which is better, the physical event, the virtual event. And you've got those that are like, no, virtual events will never be as good as physical events. And then you got those that are saying, well, physical events cost too much to put on, and you should just put on a virtual event. So you have experience in both sides. So we should just sit back and let you tell us from your
Mhm.
experience the good, the bad, and the ugly of each.
Yes, sir. So uh, GE Healthcare. I got to go back over a decade to that environment because when the housing market crisis hit, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people pulled back on their marketing budgets. And not only that, trade shows, people forget this, trade shows in the mid 2000s took a tremendous hit because marketing budgets were limited and so were travel expenses. So I
Mm-hmm.
could actually remember back in 2006, not only were we doing webinars at GE, we
Mm-hmm.
actually did a virtual event, like a virtual summit with a tech platform, with a virtual vendor pavilion. There was a chat like feature. You can make an avatar that would walk around and you'd hear the footsteps pitter pattering.
Oh
And
wow.
so that was around then. And even back then to what I liken now is that the situation presented one that you're going to have to make the most of that situation. And that was that in back in '06 we had a difficult financial situation to overcome. So how are we going to interact and make this work? And in 2020, I feel like it's the same way that everybody's going to try to make the most of a challenging situation and pivot. But but to me, even though I run a digital marketing company, it is the caveat or the bait, if you will, for me to get in person with you. It's what it takes for me to get on the playing field. And I don't think that we can ever replace the need for human interaction. And not to be biased with it because I have an in-person event, um, and it drives revenue. In our virtual event doesn't necessarily drive as much revenue as the in-person. My best example is the exercise gym. So my wife works out at a local gym. They've developed a really great following and sense of community in an online presence as well. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when the pandemic hit, and I talked to them, kind of like I was like, develop developing some Facebook lives get you in tune to people. Obviously, you've got your paywall with your Zoom and however you're doing that remote classes. But if this situation teaches us anything, there's a small percentage of people that will tap into that free live environment.
Mm-hmm.
But what people were really yearning for and missing was that human interaction, that human connection, and they all wanted to be back at the gym.
Okay.
And so I think you can liken it to, hey, big trade show, to um, to the gym, to whatever it is. I think people really want that personal connection. From an event perspective, there's so much value that I always get from attending an event that
Mm-hmm.
isn't necessary, that is a byproduct of the event. So like you have so many people, that have a similar interest in being at X trade show or X industry event.
Okay.
And on the show floor, it's like people kind of have their guard up. Maybe you're going into a talk that somebody's giving, but I find like I make these amazing relationships in line at the cab stand or at the bagel stand or getting a cup of coffee in the morning. When I'm traveling, like walking through an airport and I'm seeing advertising on a wall, like I'm experiencing things that are outside my normal environment that are so invaluable that I'm able to bring back and implement as a part of a marketing strategy that I also think that is kind of um, not stressed enough with that in-person experience.
That makes sense. Yeah, because you do usually make relationships outside of the actual breakout rooms. You out in the lobby, you'll meet somebody and have a conversation. That conversation then takes you to a turn in business that you might not have thought about. And that's usually the case. I mean, I can't remember. I did speak with some keynotes sometimes, but usually after the conference is somebody that wasn't a speaker, that was just there, that I keep in touch with, over the long term.
Yeah.
And things happen. Good. Yeah, good point. Good point. So when it comes to event marketing, I mean, I know you have probably had people ask you, what makes up a good event and what makes up a good marketing strategy to put on an event.
Yep. I can go back to the GE days
Mhm.
to actually running my own event that grew from 0 to over 1,000 attendees with participants, speakers, sponsors, all showing up. Um, First and foremost, I think you have to deliver an amazing experience. And if you're a first year event, it's difficult to conceptualize an amazing experience when obviously you've never had an event. But I think you
Okay.
got to deliver an amazing experience. So that's goal number one of everything that we do for my specific event. So we goal set. Number two is that we want people to walk away with a piece of knowledge that they want to implement in their business that very day. So again, we're bringing value, right? And number three is we want them to make an amazing or a meaningful connection with somebody else, whether it's a business network, somebody to go grab coffee, but we want to be that connector. And I tell you, the thing that makes me feel the best is like how many people in our regional event that I see coming together on social media. Like currently today, they'll post something about, hey, I did this, I collaborated, we had lunch. And I know those people and I like connect. I'm like, hey, how did you guys meet? And they're like, we met at DOYO. And these are like now 4-year relationships. Um, Same thing with any sort of big national, industry trade event. I think it's got to be a really valuable event. Now,
Okay.
when you get into it beyond that, is I think that the opportunity for success and is obviously making a lot of connections, bringing a lot of leads. It starts well in advance of the event and marketing um, 3 to 6 months out with a content strategy that you're bringing value with either a monthly webinar, your blog, your podcast, social media, whatever it is that you're doing, plus integrating your email list. The battle is won and lost 3 to 6 months in advance. So many clients have brought me in 2 weeks in, 3 weeks before an event, and or they brought me in after that, said we got nothing out of it. It's because they don't start with that 6 month to 3 month countdown.
Now, is that
And
virtual and physical or just physical?
webinar, obviously, a half hour long webinar, is a much different conversation. We're usually looking at about 3 to 4 weeks of lead time for
Okay.
promoting that event and building engagement.
So
Um,
it's weeks with virtual, but it's months with physical.
Yes, and so like now, if the virtual event's going to expand, if it's going to be more than just a 45-minute webinar, and you're looking at like, hey, we're going to do a half-day virtual event,
Mhm.
I'm always thinking about 3 to 6 months in advance. Um, Now, our first conference, I had about 6 months lead time,
Okay.
But then years 2 through 4, we were in a position where like we knew that we were going to have a content strategy for 364 days out of the year that was for the success of that 1 day event.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, so like I really feel like that's one. Number two is the event. My event specifically is very regional, so we do attract people. We've had people come from all over the country, but it's very regional. And when you look at a lot of trade shows that you might be attending as a business, they're obviously always in a location. So what
Hmm.
I did when I was back at GE Healthcare is I would circle customers that were within a drive-in distance of the physical location. So if we were in or the Orlando Convention Center, we said, okay, we're going to take every prospect and client within a 60-mile radius. That's an easy one for us to identify and market heavily to those people
Hmm.
to try to get the drive-in people for the day. And then we expand the circle out. Well, here's our 60 to 150-mile people, and then here's our 300-mile radius people. And the
Okay.
belief is that geography can also help to dictate whether or not people are going to go to an event, and then obviously from there whether or not you can make a meaningful connection. The third thing is I would tell you that if you're in a position that you can rely on sales and really have the we conversations as a marketing person, what are
Hmm.
we going to do? What can we do to support you? And by the way, salesperson, you've got relationships with these individuals that might be attending the event. What can we do to partner up for you to have your one-on-one context to help you get those individuals, prospects and clients to come to us? Um, an interesting thing about GE Healthcare was that at one point we have placed so much emphasis upon net new business. So, the
Hmm.
lifeblood of every company is, hey, we want new sales. What we were finding out though, like through some analysis that I did, that we're investing like $2 million into a booth at a Chicago trade show. And they felt like it was kind of like, hey, we're getting a couple new deals a year out of this. Further analysis proved that the amount of business that was coming through the booth that we were getting our hands on during the week of that conference was or trade show was more like $20 million, because they continually overlooked the existing clientele base for the upsell wallet share expansion opportunities. And
Oh,
you
okay.
never want to look over that 80-20 principle. So I always made sure that we invoked a strategy to say like, hey, look, yeah, we want this new business, but we have $20 million worth of business coming to the event. Like we can't ignore that. We need to, we need to treat that and embrace that. And so those are just some of the things that off the top of my head that that we've done, that I've done that resonate with success.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's sort of like the cell phone scenario. Now, AT&T now, I think it's AT&T or Verizon. One of those two, might have been Verizon. Has the no, it is AT&T. Has the we treat our existing customers like the new customers. And I think a lot of businesses are like that. They're so busy chasing new customers and new clients that they don't take care of the ones they already have.
It
So
took
that
so long for them to like like right. It's the cable company is another prime example of that. If you're a customer of a cell company, a carrier, a cable company, like how many times did you have a conversation with them and you're like, they just don't care about my business?
yeah. Oh yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah. I had a landscaper that I let go that was the same way. He was like he was charging me one thing, but then he asked me to refer a neighbor. And then so I referred the neighbor, the neighbor got the discount price. And I'm like, why am I paying more than the neighbor when I've been with you for over a year and they're paying less than me? Oh, well, it's new business. And I said, well, fine, I'll just find a new landscaper. You know, I was like, you got to take care of your existing customers.
yeah, no
Even if
doubt.
you discount your price, you take care of them in other ways to show that you appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ben.
So, wow, wow. So you've been planning, like you have your schedule half a year in advance, sometimes a year in advance. Um, what are some of the, I guess you would say, milestones that let you know that this should be a successful event, or maybe we should look at some different things because this is not turning out? Like, let's say month 2 in, and you're not getting any type of engagement or response that you're expecting. What are some of the things that you should look for, and what do they tell you?
So, um, after we did the first event, and then we kind of had the first time where we had this big runway with the event coming back in the second year. So we never really had a full calendar year. So like years 1 and 2 were really the learning curve, and then year 3 was like, all right, here we go. We opened up our call for speakers. It's kind of like the start of that process. Um, but I really have to tell you, like, as long as the financial break even
Mm-hmm.
points were covered, and that's where we go back to measure a lot of business and business success, is really back right with the numbers. Like, did we hit our sponsorship number? Did we hit our revenue projections? And for me, it has always been back to the 3 goals that is the premise, and we've got a mission as well, and that's to educate people ongoing,
Mm-hmm.
stimulate the economy of Youngstown, Ohio, and be purpose driven, try and give back with either contributions to business nonprofits, and or give some time back to the nonprofits. And if we live that mission and we've lived our goals, then I really feel like the rest of everything takes care of itself.
Okay.
So we started to pay attention to key performance indicators from a quantitative perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So qualitatively, it's easy to measure, hey, are we delivering these things? And so the quantitative side of those projections are, there should be a direct impact that all those continue to go up. So our
Okay.
call for speakers increased. It was, first year was called 15 people in my network and said, hey, do you want to speak at my marketing conference? And they're like, yeah, it'd be pretty cool. Second year was like, we're going to open this up for call for speakers, and ended up getting something like 50 to 60 people that submitted to speak to get into the conference. So that started to become a measuring stick to say, how many people are looking to speak at the conference? I'd be lying to you if I didn't, look at our social media statistics, because there's a correlation to that with the value of sponsorships. So is my email list growing? Am I seeing increases in web traffic from Google Analytics, on social media? That's been an interesting go, because from where we started 5 years ago to where we sit now, social media is a lot different.
Yeah.
And then the different nuances and aspects of video, have we've just seen diminishing returns from where we were 5 years ago because of platform changes. But we look for things on social media. Are they heading in the right direction? And then obviously, financially, we're looking at sponsorships. Hey, we want to have 5 sponsors that are going to, basically underwrite and sponsor the event. And I have a much different view of speakers and sponsors as well. Like, my sponsorships have always been, you know, this isn't about your name on a sign. This is about you being integrated in a content marketing strategy for the entire year, or from the day that you sign on. And we want to bring you more value than just, hey, here's your logo, thank you. It's you're in the social media strategy, you're in the email strategy, you're at times we're consulting as a part of that sponsorship agreement. And
Okay.
then attendees. So we do take a look at ticket sales and how many we're selling. But again, like, I gauge more of the success off of not the attendance,
Okay.
but more off of the experience.
Okay. Now, you spoke a little bit about speakers and how many people want to speak. Now, when you're promoting the event, have you seen it being more topic driven to have people attend, or speaker name driven?
I don't. That's interesting because I come up with different topics. Like we need lead gen, we need social media, we need SEO, we need those sorts of things. Do we need to, we've surveyed our audience. Do we need it to be more B2B, more B2C?
Mhm.
Um, and you know, I think it's more speaker driven, and the reason I say that is that 80% of the people that speak at our event either are from our immediate region or have a tie back to this area.
Okay.
And I think that draws attention. Now, the other side of that conversation is that the majority of these people that have spoken at our event or are speaking at the event have spoken at some of the largest, most prestigious conferences in the country. Like we have people in our lineup that are speaking at Inbound, Content Marketing World, Marketo's National, like all the big conferences that cost thousands of dollars. They're speaking at our little event. So we got a lot of talented marketing professionals and sales and entrepreneurs in this community, and we're in this interesting period. Being in Northeast Ohio, being in Youngstown, Ohio, there's a revitalization movement that's going on. We've got a huge tech incubator. We've got a ton of money that's been invested by the federal government in additive manufacturing and 3D printing. Our Youngstown State University does a great job, 14,000 students on campus, and there's a vibrant downtown. And so one of the rallying points in the cog in this whole revitalization process is a little event like this that becomes a rallying point. And then putting local people on that stage that either some of them are getting their first opportunity to speak and are ultra talented and have gone on to bigger and better events, or are already getting recognized at bigger events, and then here. And so, our mix is like 20%, 20%, 20%, 20% VP of marketing, director, manager, entrepreneur, salespeople. And
Okay.
so the content spans as well, which helps to dictate the audience. But people then, people like, and not one industry dominates the region that we're in. So we can't just do a marketing conference on tech or marketing conference
Okay.
on, right? So people were coming, they're like, I know that person, and then I'm getting introduced to 3 or 4 more people. And we have brought people in from out of town. There's no doubt about it. We have definitely tapped into, because it's also a cool thing that people from, Happy Valley, Pennsylvania, New York City, Chicago, Illinois, they all want to come to Youngstown and talk too. So, we tap into some of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I know some people that are putting on events, they are wondering on, well, do I have to have big names in it? And or
Here's
can
the
I
other
get away with not having the top, let's say top 10, people at the event?
Here's the other thing I have to say to that. And this is not to be disparaging to anything that is out there today, but a lot of the events all feel like retread events. Like it is the same top 50 list that you see on Inc., on Forbes, on
Yeah.
Digital Marketing Today, on Marketing Profs, on this one, on that one. And like you can just kind of like blindly like close your eyes and open your eyes, and you see a lot of the same names and a lot of the same faces at each one of these conferences. And so I don't want to, I've heard some of these talks. I think there's some brilliant individuals. I like to find people that are actually doers and doing it. And there's a difference because I get solicited all the time. So I'll get solicited by people to speak at my conference, and I'll say, well, what business have you built or are you currently building? Because like I've got 3 businesses that I've built from the ground up, and then the agency side, I'm building other people's businesses, like 8 or 10 clients. And what I get back a lot of times is the individuals have made a living building their business of speaking about, right? And that to me doesn't interest me. I'm not interested in a person that's built their speaking business. I'm interested in a person that, heck, if you got a lemonade stand, if you built that lemonade stand up to be a big lemonade stand, I'm interested in that conversation. I'm not
Yeah.
interested. I get paid to speak at all the top events.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Actually, that's the same basis that this show is on. You know, we want to talk to people that actually are doing what my boy Patrick always say, practitioners. So we want to actually talk to the people that have their hands in the soup versus the chef that's on TV talking about how to make the soup. You
Yeah.
know, so yeah, that's very important because a lot of times they know the right words, they know the right um, jargons, but they don't know how to actually do it. You know, it's like they know kind of how it works, but they haven't touched it in a long time if they've ever touched it.
I
You
had an
know, so if they had to do it, they wouldn't know how to actually do it.
I had an agency owner in the past year. We get together and I talk with like my belief is, we get a life of abundance, not scarcity, and like there's enough to go around. So agencies attend the marketing conference.
Mm,
I feel like we're helping to raise the competency level of marketing in our regional area, and they all win from it. And my belief is like I can only maybe take 5 clients out of an event where 400 people are there. Like so I've become what I think is friends with a lot of the agencies that are in town in our immediate area. And one of the agency's owners was asking me, he's like, so he's like, you actually know how to do Google AdWords? And I was like, yeah, like who else is gonna I mean, like I do have people that do work for me and work with me that can do Google AdWords campaigns, but like, yes, like I actually get my hands dirty, like making the soup. Like
yeah,
how else? And that's the other thing that my own business actually served a purpose for as well. So DOYO has been my own test kitchen over the past 5 years. So, because my
okay,
belief is this: if I'm an agency and you're paying me to grow your business, it really shouldn't be trial and error, right? Like, I try to mitigate as much risk as I possibly can for a client, but in the same note, what you're doing in marketing sometimes is like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work?
yeah,
And so I've used DOYO as my own test kitchen before I'll ever go out and roll out an idea or a strategy to a client, because then I can say like with good faith, like, hey, Facebook Live is a good strategy. Here's why. Here's what we know, and not
yeah.
just, hey, let's roll the dice with your money. You know,
And that makes a whole lot of sense. You know, in a world where we're all trying to be the gurus and professional and experts and perfect at all of it, I'm learning more about those that are transparent have become better at providing, that service and advice. Those that have been like, have you ever been banned on Facebook? Yep, I have. And I know
yeah,
exactly what you're going through. Or have you ever had ads go and all of a sudden they hit attrition and you're like, yep, I know exactly what that means versus nope, all my ads go perfect, never been banned on any. So when it happens, everybody is kind of dumbfounded. Everybody's like, I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Jeff, 3 days. So there's a phenomenon on Facebook that is called the Facebook whiteout, and you. So I had to look this up. So 3 years ago, we're heading into the conference, and this is why it's dangerous, people, to build a house on rented space, because you can just never know when it could be it could be pulled out from underneath you. Invest in your email list. So I go to log in to my Facebook account 3 days before the conference, and my screen's whited out, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And there's a phenomenon that's the Facebook whiteout page, and I was basically blocked out of my Facebook page at a very critical, crucial time. And I was like, I was panicking. Now, luckily, it was just isolated to my Facebook account, so other admins on the account still had access. But that was a very uncomfortable minute.
Yeah.
And for people that don't get their hands dirty, they don't know. They scramble. They don't know what to do. They've not been there, and I can relate. I hopefully, people don't have to experience what I did. But to your point, I've lived it. You've lived it.
Yeah. Oh, same with me. I remember Facebook had decided to block my account. Now, this is an account that I never used for advertisement. And I said, all of a sudden said, okay, I'm going to use it with this campaign. I'm going in to set it up, and now I'm blocked. And I'm like, really? And it was because of a guideline violation. And so I respond back, what was the guideline violation? Because I've never used this account before. The only guidelines I've violated is I've never used this account before. It's like, how is it violating anything? Because there's no ads, there's no campaigns, there's no content. And so that's when I started to see, and I started asking people, and they were like, yeah, I've been blocked. And I started noticing some other people getting blocked. And I said, okay. So I put two and two together. This was back when they were transitioning to the new business suite. And I'm like, oh, they're just pruning out accounts. They're pruning accounts that haven't been used. But until I experienced that, if I would have had a client say, I've been blocked, of course, we'd have been like, well, what did you do? And the client's like, I didn't do anything. I just been blocked. So, yeah.
It's crazy. Right now I'm working with somebody. I don't typically get involved in political causes with clients. I purposely have stayed out of it, but I recently took something on in a local spring election. And so that's been a little bit of a learning lesson, because Facebook has tightened up. After everything that you've seen on Facebook over the past year to 4 years, all of a sudden, just some little local election trying to help a person with some basic Facebook ads on a video, I now have to go through a 7-step process to be approved so that I can run some ads about social issues and elections. And I'm like, these campaigns just got done spending collectively $200 million in the past year. I had to live with my feed being jumbled up every day. And now all of a sudden you have a conscience of what goes on Facebook.
Exactly. And it's funny because they control what they want to put out. And these platforms, and you see your email list, because if they control that, they control your business. And I see a lot of, like, when I'm scrolling just for fun, entertainment wise, a lot of content creators complaining. My post got banned. My account got banned. I can't believe I've been banned for this, but they'll show other people's posts. But these people can do this, this, and this. I just said this, and this person is showing this, this, and this. And, you really are being controlled by what they decide they will allow you to do. Yeah. And it becomes frustrating. I had an attorney I was working with, and their account was blocked. And it was a simple ad. So I'm like, okay. So I tried to be coy with it. I said, I'm going to copy word for word somebody else's ad that's been approved in another state. Only thing's changed in it is the state. That's it. Same everything. Yeah. Had the graphic recreated to look just like the other graphic, everything. Got blocked. And I'm like, how? Because this ad is running right now. That's the exact same ad. There's only one word in the ad that's different, and that's the state. That's it. And so I started to realize there's no real rhyme or reason. They can do what they want, and they have their, I guess you would say, customer service buttoned up so tight that they know you will never be able to talk to somebody. Yeah. And you just gotta, figure out how to maneuver around it if you ever do fall into that.
Yeah. So now, how long have you been running the show, and how long have you been in your business?
I've been in my business since 2000. well, actually 2005. I want to say 2003, but I had a web design company and I got tired of doing web design. So I got into marketing with this business since 2005.
Yeah.
Now, before I was in a marketing agency, I was working in-house marketing for different companies and so forth. But I've been doing that. And this show I've been doing actually since, I want to say 2007. But at that time, it was just an audio podcast and it evolved over. And it was kind of, it still is just a show that I enjoy just doing.
Yeah.
I never really put anything around it like sponsorships or anything of that nature. And I kind of took it to video, I think around probably 2011, because I was like, okay, video is the thing. And, I'm ready to go ahead and make it a full-fledged production. I did a Roku channel at one point, did that for a minute. And that's when I realized not too many people are on Roku for business. They're on Roku for fun. So that was a pretty much test and fail. That, the Roku channel was a good idea, but I just couldn't get people to log on to watch the show.
I remember when there was that brief conversation about that type of content on Roku.
Yeah. It was a very short conversation. It seemed like a good idea, but it just, like you say, when you look at the numbers just, people just weren't. I should have been ratchet. I should have had more reality TV, and I probably would have got a whole lot more views. People didn't want to really learn about building their business because the competitor was YouTube. They were like, I'll just go to YouTube for that type of content.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was a learning. And so now I've kind of built it to where I'm really enjoying just having conversations like this with other marketers and, just helping the community basically by letting them hear from the ones that are actually doing it instead of all the overwhelming information out there from people that have wrote a book and, built the course and speak, like you say, are speakers, but, really haven't done it in a long time if they've ever done it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Like I get, we've given away a lot over the years, and that's still my belief. I get a little bit crazy when I go to watch something or read something and it's very early on being monetized, and it seems like nowadays that the acceleration rate of people trying to monetize is nowhere near the timeline that like I set forth for myself, and furthermore, like I still don't.
Yeah.
A lot of that's wrapped up in the coursework type of strategy that a lot of people have, that I'm going to give you this one little nugget and then buy my coaching or buy my class services. And and that's their model, and that works for them, and that's fine. It just, I'm more the mindset of, let's just play this long game.
Yeah. I've had to learn how to maneuver with that as well. I've even helped market some course creators out there.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is the way to get rich is to sell the course. A lot of times it's not that they're not giving good information. They are. The real secrets they know is majority of people aren't going to implement any of it. And they give you just enough to make you dangerous, but not really as effective. And it's not that they're trying to withhold. It's just that there's a lot of little things behind the scenes that you're not going to catch, or it's not sexy. You're not going to want to hear what they really had to do to get there. And so, with that, there's a lot of people that are, triggered by those nice slogans, those nice titles. Let me show you how to make 7 figures in 30 days without ever having to leave your house, ever having to, turn on your computer. and you're like, what? From my cell phone?
Dude, listen, nobody wants to hear that for the first 5 years, my half day on Friday ended at 4 o'clock, and
Yeah,
then cook dinner and relax, and then Saturday was 8 to noon.
yeah,
Like nobody wanted to hear that, and they're like, "What'd you do the rest of the time?" I was like, "Well, Monday through Thursday was like the 8 to 4 grind, stop for 3 hours to be dad, and then go back to work at 9 o'clock at night until 2 o'clock in the morning." Like nobody's like, they're like, "What?" Like,
yeah,
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 no,
yeah,
that's what it took. And I finally got to the point, um, I finally got to the point like where Friday rolls around now, and unless I've got an alert set up for a client that could potentially be a PR disaster,
yeah,
you're calling the bat phone. It's like I am actually comfortable now when I don't have unchecked boxes come Friday, and just kind of relax and go be dad and go enjoy life, because I worked to that point. But there was a point in time where like I was just like, if not everything on this to-do list isn't done by today, I got to wake up and get it done tomorrow, and I can't enjoy my weekend. And that
yeah.
OCD is not a good spot to be, but it's what
Oh,
it takes.
definitely. And to be honest, I've been there too, to where you're on vacation and you're the one with the computer sitting in the hotel room while everybody else is at the pool or at the beach, because you have things you have to get done. And you're like, everybody's like, well, you was on vacation. Well, technically, I was just in another location,
Eh,
you know.
Hey, this vacation is not going to pay for itself. That's always kind of my
That,
claim to fame with
that is
my,
always it.
you
Yeah,
know,
that is always it.
and by the way, you guys want to go, I know you want to go enjoy the beach with me, and I'll be down. I'll be down in a few hours, right? But somebody's got to stay back and get this done so we can all enjoy this beach.
Exactly. But the funny part is that brings me to the other part that we were going to talk about, the entrepreneurialism, is sooner or later you have to hit a point to where your lifestyle is what you want it to be. And we a lot of times chase the millions of dollars, and we want to have the status of having this, 7, 8, 9-figure business, when actually, what type of lifestyle do you want to live? The freedom, the opportunity to enjoy your life the way you want to enjoy it, with who you want to enjoy it with, is more valuable to, I would say, some people than the money. So once you start figuring out that value, most people, let's put it like this, most people became entrepreneurs if they were not forced to be entrepreneurs for the freedom. But then we enslave ourselves to our business, and we work more hours than we did when we was working corporate.
That's so true. That is so true. Sometimes with the agency side of the business, I think I traded one boss for 7 bosses, right? Because I have clients that I have, and I was like, what was I thinking? But it really became, first of all, it's freedom to me, and it's oxygen that I'm dictating my own schedule. And I've always said, like, goal wise, there's really not a financial goal. How much money do we want to make in a year? Well, everybody had a plan last year how much they wanted to make, and we all know how that probably turned out for people. Some people did great, some people got crushed, and some people were kind of in the middle. But for me, I've never wanted to have to ask anybody to take a day off work. But in the 8 years that I've had my own business, I don't know that I've taken a day off work.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing. Um, you know, to talk about the sexy life of the entrepreneur, because it's such a fun word, right? Is I was telling somebody last night, like we were talking at the baseball game, we're watching two dads, and I was like, he was talking about fundraising for their baseball team, and how some people had money and some people didn't, and this and that. And I said, look, I was like, see the pants I got on? Sam's Club, $12. This is where like I shop for my clothes. And he's like, yeah, me too. He's like, I go to Uptown Cheapskate. He goes, they resell clothes there. And I was like, yeah, like that's fine. And when we decided my wife would be a stay-at-home mom, and we had 3 kids, the safe thing to sound like is to not become an entrepreneur, is to go find that corporate job with the corporate salary. But the fact is that I didn't ever control that destiny.
Yeah.
GE did a 10% firing around the holidays every year to get rid of the bottom performers. And even though I was always turning in a good year, I never knew how close I was to that line. Like I never, like when they were like, wow, he gets to stay another year and work 70 hours a week. And like, so that was one thing. The other thing was like, well, then the sacrifices we're going to make, and eventually we'll get there. Short-term pain, long-term gain is, maybe we're only a 1 vacation a year type of family. And maybe some years it's just a long weekend.
Yeah.
We went down to 1 car, family of 4 with 4 active kids. We added a 4th child since. So there's sacrifices, that we've made, over the years. But in the same note, like I coach all my kids' sports, haven't
Yeah.
missed, don't miss any of that stuff. And so that's the give and take. Not all of us are going to have this entrepreneur lifestyle, this business that we launch it, and we're, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, right? There's less of them, but more of the people that can make a really good living, and have a really good lifestyle doing it too. And I'm not talking like yachts and popping bottles and supermodels. I'm talking just like being present, and
Yeah.
whatever makes you happy,
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And even with those super performers, we don't know how their lifestyle really is. They may have a lot of money, but they may not have a lot of time and a lot of relationship. And we look at the toys and we say that they must be enjoying it because of the toys. I remember talking with the CEO one time that said he had been a CEO and hadn't taken a vacation in 10 years. And though he was making a lot of money, he never enjoyed it. Only his family enjoyed it because he was always at work. And, he was like, yeah, the cars, the home, all of that stuff. My car, the only way I enjoy it is driving it to work. And that's it. And so when you start looking at it in that perspective, it's like, wow, you got a lot of assets, a lot of money, but you don't enjoy it. And then there's people that's making half, if not even less than half of what you're making, that's enjoying life a whole lot more than you are. You got that balance. And as an entrepreneur, a lot of times we've been taught the only way you're going to get there is once you become that Forbes list candidate.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to be happy.
I mean, I got, hustle culture on the internet. You have to be very careful and cautious as to what you're viewing, as to what's real and what's not real, and what's just hashtag hustle and celebrating the endless work capacity. Arianna Huffington, maybe it was easier for her to kind of say it, but I heard her speak in public and she was phenomenal. And she said that like men in the US have the highest death rate per heart attack from stress than anywhere in the world. And it's because they do an amazing job of basically just working themselves to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, so, and I face my own burnout like syndrome, or, like, because a few between the marketing conference and the print publication, especially in the first year, come with immense deadlines, and the print publication had a lot of expectation and pressures around the quality of it. And so there's certain things that added up to that. And then, like I said, I always been around, like, to make sure that I manage my schedule with my kids. But in the same note, like, I had to be very dedicated towards growing the business. When we had our 4th child, he ended up having a health condition, and he got through it. We all got through it, and he's fine today. He's a pistol, and he's 3. But that major event along the way really helped perspective of where the emphasis was going to be as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I can see what you mean when it comes to that working yourself to death. Usually, the pressure is there, the anxiety is there, and it's just one setback away from tipping you over. And it's like you've been working at high capacity and high pressure, and then one thing goes wrong, and people look at it's funny how people look at just that one thing. Well, I can't believe because this, he all of a sudden had a breakdown. No, it's not just because of that. It's because of all that, and that was just a last straw. I can't believe I can't believe his website went down, and he was like, "Forget it, I quit." They were like, it wasn't the website.
There's a song
So
there's a song that is that it's not the straw that broke the camel's back. It's the 1,000 straws that were beneath that straw that fell
yeah,
away, right?
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so I think that I agree with you when the hustle mentality, the hustle culture, it's good to get you motivated, but you got to really figure out what works for you and what your values are. What are you in this for? And I started to look at that for myself. I started to say, okay, do you want to? Because I used to want to be that Forbes, this guy with the big multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar company with all these employees. And then I was like, dude, I don't like managing the handful of employees I got now. What would make me think that I want to manage, a company of 1,000 employees, and I got to manage all these managers and upper level managers, and you know, I'm on this scandal. All of a sudden, everything I do, if I sneeze, it's on social media, and they're like, "Oh, he must have the COVID because he just sneezed. I can't believe he's spreading it." And it's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Living under the radar. It's amazing of how much, we're influenced by that hustle culture without realizing that it might work for some of the people that are saying it, but it might not be in you. You might want something that's a little different. So,
Yeah, it's such a good point.
yeah. So cool. Well, everybody, I want to thank you because you know how I am. I can be long-winded and I can talk for days. Thank everybody for coming on and listening. I want to thank you, Dennis, for coming on and sharing your insights, and definitely opening up my eyes and everybody else's about event planning. That's something we think just happened. I mean, we just think you show up and this is how it is. It was meant to be this way.
Yeah.
Without all the planning involved. And if you're out in Ohio and you want to visit the event, then feel free to go to DOYO, it's DOYO.com. So, you can call it DOYO, you can call it
Just make sure you call it. And listen, Jeff, I've had a 4-year running show ourselves on Facebook Live that we record and then re-syndicate around the web. I want to extend it back to you to try to figure out a time slot to get you on our show over the next month or so.
Oh, of course, I'd be honored to be on it. Yeah, send me your available slots, and I'll go ahead and select the time.
Will do, my man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I learned a lot. It was great. Like I said, events has never been my thing. I tell people I don't even like setting up birthday parties. I don't like setting up dinner dates. Events have never been a thing that I've enjoyed doing or know how to do.
Well, listen, this is so when we threw our first year and 200 people signed up and the event sold out. Somebody was like, "Boy, that's a lot of work. It's really overwhelming." And having an Italian background, man, like one of my friends was like, "That's like one of the kids' birthday parties in our family." So I felt like, and it was my wife and some of my cousins, my family, that were actually helping to do it. So like, yeah, like this is like no big deal. This is like Sunday dinner sometimes. So,
wow, yeah. See, and me, I'm just like, I remember sometimes people were like, "Yeah, man, go ahead and plan it out." I'm thinking, the extent of my planning, I'm going to be here. You can show up if you like. And that's about it. I'm not doing any type prep work, no reservations. That's just never been my thing. So yeah, I definitely appreciate it because every time I get asked to put on the event, I always defer. And now I know somebody to defer to because I just be like, no, Vince, I don't do them. I just don't do them.
Well, I hope that you guys found some value in it. Thank you again, Jeff, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and